I'm gonna pull a Kanye, and you're gonna see on that camera view me putting in my passcode of 0000000.
Cinetherapy podcast with Sam and Mitch. Or Dad.
Welcome to the Cinetherapy podcast by Inland Film Co. I'm Mitch Williams, joined by Sam McGhee. This is episode 2, where we'll be discussing our mantra, ABR, as well as a response and criticism we received from a listener last week. And also, we'll be diving into what we think the word cinematic means. So, Sam.
Mitch.
How's your week?
We had a long shoot today. We were up at Dark 30 for some sunrise drone shots. And I think that's the best way to end the week, is with an early sunrise drone shoot and recording a podcast.
Totally.
How was your week?
Good. I'm friggin' tired, man. Dark 30 is... It messes with me, man.
Can I start off with
hit us up.
Referencing our last podcast episode?
I think that's probably a good thing to say, is that we actually had at least one listener.
Oh yeah, we for sure had one listener on our last podcast. So this is only episode 2, and we are getting the hang of this. This is good. In the first episode, I was on a roll, and I said something about school. I said that you don't need school. I learn everything on the internet, and there's some truth to that. But I think what's phenomenal about that is I really, really valued my education in still photography and studio photography. I went to a local college here in town, and we know we had one listener in last week's podcast because one of my professors emailed me and had some things to say about some of my comments, and this is just amazing. This is actually a professor that I really hold in high regard. Ira Gardner. That was a good segue. But he pointed out that I actually quoted him twice in the last episode, and this is actually I totally forgot that he's the one who said these things. But I don't even.
Do you remember what you said?
I know that I said something about. Well, one of the things that he pointed out is that we talked about elevating. We don't want to refer to what we do as videos. We want to refer to them as films because we want to elevate that. And one of the major things that Ira always hits on is saying the word photograph. He never says picture. He never says photo. He always says photograph because he wants to elevate the art of photography. And for a lot of students, that gets annoying. But it wasn't until after school that I realized I agree with that one. Because when you, one of the other professors, Eric, he also said, when you frame a photograph, when you put it in a frame, when you put a mat around it, it elevates this photograph. You can take any picture, but if you frame it and put it on a wall, it elevates it as a piece of art. And so that's something that they hit on really big. And I totally agree with that. But it wasn't until after school that I started to really take that into account. But I can't remember the two quotes. One of them was
about elevating content,
but the other one was the wedding industry. When you post the photos that you love, and those are the ones that your clients are going to see and want more work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily matter about. You don't need to post the personal photos that the bride and groom loved. They may have not paid too much attention to the ones that you put a lot of time into. They paid attention to the personal ones, but it's not the personal ones that's going to get you more business. It's the one that you put a lot of time into that's going to get you more business. That was actually one from one of his classes, and when he said this, I realized that it totally is from one of his classes.
So you learned that in school?
I did learn that in school, and I think I do take for granted the amount of things that I regurgitate in our work that are totally from school. But he did need to email me and said that he enjoyed the podcast, but he asked me not to disrespect school and the educational resources. And I think I You know, I saw when I said that last week, I saw it in your eyes. You were like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far. Because you also have at least some schooling in film. You studied other things, but you did trail off into that, right? And you really take, like, we talk about that a lot, is those classes that you took really influenced you. And we were at a coffee shop recently, and you ran into one of your professors for
film.
And you sat down and you talked to him for a while, because, I mean, you take those moments and those classes and that experience pretty seriously. So, I mean, just to start off, we know we had one listener. And I do want to say that I love learning everything I can on the internet, but I do have to remember that I quote my professors more often than I realize.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's important to recognize that. I mean, I still think school is freaking stupid. Just joking. Ira, I know you might listen to the second. I don't know. I just want to make a joke, though. Anyways, I will say he did leave us, whatever, with an African proverb.
He did.
He ended his paragraph, multiple paragraphs, and I thought that was kind of neat. You know, it's a little. I'm
going to read this.
You're going to take
the African
stab?
proverb is,
yeah.
I am because we are.
I am because we are.
All caps.
All caps on
we.
The we. And and that's he hit on the fact that the value between each other as teacher and student, and now as colleagues. And I appreciate Ira reaching out.
Oh, yeah.
Actually taking the time to listen. And
that made me want to take the podcast a lot more seriously. I did, but now I'm realizing this is the kind of person listening. Okay, now I really got to think about what I'm saying.
Do you feel like you're being graded?
Kind of, in a way.
Oh, don't let that kind of PTSD come back into your podcast.
I have only ever failed one class in my entire schooling career, and that was one of Ira's classes.
What class was that?
This is a great one to talk about because it's something I take seriously now. We needed to, I cannot remember the name of the class, but it dove very deeply into art being subconscious. And we had to journal our dreams, and I never did. And I never turned in any of my paperwork. And we had to, we did study a lot of the mental and emotional aspects of art. And I totally failed that one because at the time I just wanted to take pictures, turn them in, and get it done. And I think it wasn't, and this is actually something that I take pretty seriously now, is art. Everything we're doing, even in our commercial work, it stems from like a decision we made in camera, a decision we made in the color grading process, all the different things. It does somewhere stem from somewhere inside, and we can totally go into that more on a different episode. I had a moment in that class that I failed, where I turned in a photo that was a joke, a total joke. It was from a different class. And I knew no one in this class would know that this photo that I'm turning in is from that other class. And we had a guest speaker that day, Tony Boccaccio. He's a National Geographic photographer. He's one of the crazy guys that said art is subconscious. And I thought, this is just dumb. And I turned this photo in, and he called me out on something in front of the whole class, and I was sweating, and I almost started crying. I thought this moment was dumb, but years later, I still think back to that moment, and I think, okay, if it's not subconscious, then how on earth did this guy pick up on a message that I didn't even know was there? And he totally picked into my life something that was true, but holy crap, how did he get that? So
he's a palm reader, but a photo reader. That's wild.
It's wild.
That's a good story. I've never heard that.
We'll talk about it, because there's a lot of stuff that I would like to dive into, but maybe on like episode 50.
We could just talk about some funny things that happened today.
Yeah, I think we should talk about the funny things that happened today, because
Longboard dude had me all sorts of laughing today. I'll
Longboard dude.
I'll repeat that. Not repeat. I'll just say again. We ate at Zona Blanca again today. It's just, we talked about it last week. We'll talk about it again today. If you come to Spokane, if you're listening outside of the area, hit it up. If you live in Spokane and you haven't eaten there, hit it up. Anyways, there's this guy on the sidewalk and just listening to his music, dancing. And he would kick his longboard down the sidewalk, down the hill. Let it go, and like somehow it would either end up back with him because somebody brought it back to him, or he'd just like dance his way down the sidewalk and go grab it and put it back on the sidewalk. First time our camera's been compared to a GoPro today.
Oh my goodness. We have a giant FS7 batteries, huge cinema lens, microphone. I mean, it is like a documentary setup, huge. And we have it on a slider, a big Kessler Cine slider. And then we're sitting in like the middle of the doorway, the entrance to this coffee shop. And this lady walks in and walks past. Oh, is that like a GoPro thing? Yeah,
it's a GoPro.
I just saw part of it. Sorry. That's a big camera.
That happened. And then we met someone in the marketing, digital advertising, just, that world.
The world of advertising.
Yeah, and first time he saw us filming for a coffee shop and wanted to ask us who we were. And then I'm telling you, T&B, man, this is my favorite thing that I've learned was just, I do so-and-so's ads, so-and-so's ads, and so-and-so's. And he's like, just turn and burn type stuff.
Turn and burn.
T&B. That was fantastic.
It was fantastic because like all the different brands he mentioned, we've seen their ads and we've talked about their ads being
that it doesn't seem like much goes in.
It doesn't seem like much goes in. And so to meet the guy in charge of those and his attitude is, turn and burn,
turn and burn stuff.
Oh.
He's probably not telling his clients that. And I don't want to talk poorly or down on anybody, but it was enlightening that we had this kind of own stigma, or we got to turn the kegerator off.
The kegerator's got to be turned off during podcasts.
Yeah, but then
the beer's not cold.
Okay, 1 sec. I need a water too.
Kind of feel like that's the sound that should start off every podcast episode.
Like Lil Wayne. Every one of his songs starts with that. Like he's lighting a lighter.
He doesn't remember his lyrics. He doesn't write them down for live shows.
Yeah.
He was on Jimmy Fallon recently, and they talked about that. And Jimmy pulled up a picture of somebody else had to type out his lyrics for him before he went on a Jimmy Fallon, just so he remembered what he was saying, what he was supposed to sing. And they gave him to him, and he goes up to rehearse, and he's reading like, oh, I said that. Yeah, that's cool. It's amazing. And that's his philosophy. He's like, I just say whatever I'm feeling.
We could talk. Let's do it. Let's hit it. ABR.
Yeah, we have to talk about ABR.
Always be rolling. You set the camera down and you're going to set up the tripod with the slider somewhere. I find that's an opportunity for me to keep rolling.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that there are times where, let's go set up the tripod, and I do it, and you're over there grabbing stuff. And then more often than not, that's content that we're going to use. I think the most recent example that I have where it meant something was our project for that nonprofit, and we're talking about this. I'll just be forward. It's for the Arc of Spokane, and we were interviewing a gentleman who can't speak with his mouth, and he uses his feet to type Morse code, and that's how he communicates, and you can hear the dots and dashes. So we go to the Arc's headquarters to meet with a couple of people who worked there, and we had told this guy in there that we had met Paul, the guy who speaks with his feet. And he goes, "Oh yeah, the first time I met Paul," and he just starts talking. Meanwhile, I'm setting up the hypercardioid to put over top of him. We're going to interview him. And you had the camera and you just start recording. The shot that went in, luckily you had the Rode shotgun on the FS7. The shot that made it of him talking about this guy was that shot. And it was because it was the most authentic. It was the most real. It didn't sound scripted. It didn't sound staged. That's why I think both you and I have come to this conclusion that always be rolling.
Always be rolling.
And multiple shots from that specific shoot made it in because we set up the camera on the tripod first and we pressed record.
Yeah.
And then we set up everything else around, and anything that you capture, whether it's communication or whether it's something that's anyways, that's
I think another great example of something like that happening. It didn't make it into the final cut, but it did make it into a daily. But it was a really emotional daily for us. We were telling the story of Gracie Jensen. We had here in Spokane, out in Freeman, we had a school shooting, and one of the survivors, we were making a film for the local children's hospital, and we got to interview her and her family, and it was really emotional and really heavy. And I think for us, part of the message that we wanted to, or part of the story we wanted to tell, was our own experience being inside their home, hearing their story. And I remember making a daily, like the next night or something. You said, "I don't want to use this footage for dailies because it was just too emotional. We want to wait till we make the final film for the organization, and then we'll go there." But there was one piece of footage, always be rolling, while we were getting the mom and dad set up, sitting on the couch. I was getting lights set up. We were getting mics set up. I set the camera down, the big old camera package, on a table, and just hit record, mostly to show the behind the scenes of us setting up stuff. But what resulted from just leaving the camera rolling is you grabbed the camera. I was ready for it, and so you handed it to me. I grabbed it and I sat down in place, right in the spot where we were going to film the parents. And they were already talking about real raw stuff. Mm-hmm. So I made a daily where you see me set up some stuff, and then you handed the camera to me and I held it on the parents, and then we hear a vague part of their story. And this daily shows that, like, for you and I, hearing these people's stories is so much more than just, now we made a video and we threw it out there and they raised some money and that's cool, and then we move on. We left that place invested emotionally in this family and in their journey, and so I sent you this daily of like us setting up and sitting down with the family and hearing these words, and you responded with I can't believe you. We have to post it, but I can't believe you. You were like playfully mad, but always be rolling. Like for us, that daily expresses how we interacted with this family and what we took away from.
Exactly. I think you say that didn't make it into the final cut. You're right. But what did was a bunch of stuff where we were still rolling.
Oh yeah.
That's true. Everything that we showed for the most part of Gracie herself, was like outtakes
after we were done filming,
or every time the phone rang or her mom interrupted or whatever. I think traditionally I've seen in environments where an interruption happens and another cinematographer just presses.
They stop recording.
The recording. And they wait till like, okay, we're back ready. And I think the fact that
that's a great point.
Yeah, we kept that record light on, the red light on, we caught the moments where she was saying, "Mom."
You see her being a
Mom, being a teenager. And that to me was the story. I mean, this is
I think we got like the most authentic reactions from people at the event where the film was shown, the fundraising event. We got the most authentic or responses from people when those moments happened, when they saw those outtakes from Gracie. Like the room was so heavy, and then those moments happened, and they laughed like, "Oh my gosh, she's a teenager." This is like they felt all the levels of emotion in the story, not just sadness. They really felt like positivity. They felt like this huge stack of layers of emotions.
A gentleman named Charlie. I don't need to bring out his last name. Anyways, he approached me after we aired that, and he said that we did an amazing job sharing that story. But what stuck out to me, I don't need to talk about how amazing we did or whatever. What stuck out to me was, he said, what you did tonight is you made people feel uncomfortable. And what people needed to feel tonight was uncomfortable, because there were 225 people there ready to write checks. And the reality is, in any of their given days, they just go about their life, and they either have money or don't have to worry about things happening to them or things happening to their kids. They haven't thought about that. And what we did was we brought them outside of that. And that, to me, matters when we're sitting down to make a film of documentary, anything, like, is to think about the emotion involved in that, and how does it make us feel. And if we can get to the core of how the deep rooted feeling that we feel or should feel, then I think we're doing our jobs when it comes to
that's powerful.
Yeah. Segue. I don't know if there's a segue from.
There's not a segue. We went down a rabbit hole that we were not.
The question that we get asked from people on the street. Do you want to say, or you want me to?
I mean, you might need to say it. I'm thankful. Like we've made jokes about this because we keep getting asked this more and more often. And then we heard another filmmaker friend say, "Oh man, you're right. People do ask that." My wife, for the first time after we started joking about this, my wife experienced it.
Yeah. And she witnessed it. She there firsthand.
Witnessed it firsthand. I'm gonna say it. I was in a coffee shop talking about first episode of this podcast. Hey, we just launched it. I was talking to a friend, and this other guy overheard and said, "Oh, are you guys in the film business?" Yeah, we are. Do you guys do drones and stuff?
I'm laughing. I'm trying to hold back.
Do you guys do drones? That is the first question every single time. You guys in the film business? If we're out on the street, we're downtown, we got our camera stuff, we're filming, somebody walks by, "Hey, you guys do films? That's cool. You guys do drones?"
Do you guys do drones and stuff? It's always. Do you guys so do you guys do drones? So you guys do drones and stuff? And then the times, to go further on that, the time that we have one of our drone pilots that we use out and we're actually flying the drone, and they see it and they're like, "Man, how much does that bleeper cost? I wonder how much that," like, they have to talk about how they say, "How much you pay for that thing?
How much is that thing?
How much is that thing?" Anyways, oh my gosh.
And then a lot of times they'll even go a step further, and if you tell, like first of all,
bought it at Radio Shack. $50.
I mean, first of all, the thing's in the air. We're flying it. I want to be nice and I want to answer the question. But then it's like, okay, all right, well, I can afford some time. I'm going to make sure that my pilot can actually continue doing what they're doing. It's really expensive. He's got a lot invested in it. The drones are really cool. And you're like, "Oh, yeah. I got one for like $1,000. It's pretty sweet." Okay, that's cool. That's really cool. I'm going to go back to what I'm doing.
Today I had to talk off someone. Not talk off it, but I knew you and our pilot were flying.
Yeah.
And I was like, he came over and he's like, oh, yeah, what are you guys doing? And I explained, he's like, oh, yeah, I bought one of those. And it's like, man, I just couldn't fly it and run the camera at the same time. So I gave it to my son-in-law, and then he starts telling me about his son-in-law with it. I'm like, man, if you were talking to one of them right now, you would just be wasting their time. And so I feel you on that.
And I like every person that we talk to, this is an opportunity of some kind. Like I want to talk to you about it. It's an exciting thing when you've got a drone out. These things are cool and exciting, and everybody's so interested. I'm fascinated by them. This thing's in the air and it's flying around, and it's so cool. I mean, it's almost like Jerry Seinfeld talks about. He talks about if there is work being done, men will gather. If there's a shovel,
a hammer.
If there's a hammer, if the hood of a car is open, men just gather because they want to be around this. That's not like any work's getting done. They just want to be around it. So if there's a drone, if there's the opportunity of a drone, people are going to gather.
So true.
So I don't want to turn people away and just be irritated or mean, but like we only have 20 minutes of the good light right now, and we have to fly and get this shot. And we only have maybe 15 minutes of battery, and we're recording raw. So we only have so much record time. I cannot, and also we're in the middle of downtown. Like my pilot, if this falls, my pilot has all the FAA regulations flying around in his brain. He's trying to make sure that everything is taken care of. I do not have time to answer your question right now. That drone is worth X amount of tens of thousands of dollars, and I cannot answer the question.
And it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits. Yes. So we will get to your question at the end of the day when this is all done, but still stands.
I think we started with, do you do drones?
Do you do drones?
And I still want to say is hilarious.
We have got to make t-shirts of this.
We're going to. Do you do drones? Or dig das, something like, do you do drones and stuff? We talked about coining the term cinematic marketing videos. We talked about calling what we do films. I mentioned today how pretentious it sounds. We might as well come full circle in this conversation and discuss what is it that, like, what does cinematic mean?
This is a really big question.
What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me, Mitch, us as Inland? And then I think the greater question is, what does it mean to the rest of the world right now, of those in, quote, filmmaking?
I think it's a really big, for me, it's a really big question for the world of YouTube videos right now. This term gets thrown around a lot, cinematic. And I think we should start by saying that the most common usage for the word, I always hear cinematic being used in conjunction with either slow motion footage,
yep,
or shallow depth of field. It's really cinematic if it's shallow depth of field and if it's slow motion.
And we want it more shallow.
We want it, and that's the other thing, is we want it to be more shallow. I want more shallow depth of field. Well, you're literally saying you want less depth of field. I think it's just the funniest thing that, like, technology, consumer cameras, good photography and cinematography and filmmaking equipment, good stuff is becoming cheaper and more easily accessible, and I think that's amazing. I personally started my filmmaking career in high school with a 5D, with a Canon T2i,
mm-hmm,
the cheapest DSLR. I mean, at the time it was amazing. I cannot even believe that I get to use this camera. It shoots HD, and I had a lens for it, and I had, oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing ever, and that's where a lot of people are able to start now. It's so cool. It's become so accessible, and this is actually this will go all the way full circle back to me talking about schooling and dogging on schooling. I just cannot get over the fact that now that it's so widely, easily accessible, and we can all do such cool video, we can all make such cool films. No one's learning the proper terminology for things, and the shallow depth of field craze. Everybody can get bigger sensors. Everybody can get better lenses with wider apertures. It's all cinematic now.
I think
that was a long rant, and I could see you like trailing. Like, okay.
You're going somewhere. No, I think, no, what you had to say was valuable and worth saying. I think if I'm going to simplify what you said, that you and I have talked about back and forth here in the studio, when we started this business, Inland Film Co., we coined the term cinematic marketing videos.
Yeah.
I think if you watched our reel a year ago, well, it came out in December, so a couple months from a year, so 10 months ago, you would see quite a bit of slow-mo stuff.
Yeah.
I think, and that's fine. I think I still watch our reel and think that is badass. Like
this is going to transition into where I think we want to go. If you watched our reel a year ago, there is quite a bit of slow motion in it.
Yeah, but I'll take some credit, not all of the credit, but like of pushing for nat sound, especially like a lot of natural sound, and then even further than that of like just wanting things in real time. And you and I have had this back and forth exchange of like, what does that look like? As being a filmmaker and making commercial projects and whatnot, and how hard it is to actually make movies these days, like short little movies, little advertisements and whatever, without slow motion.
Oh yeah.
And so I think if you fast forward to today and you watch the daily reels as they progressed, I think for us, we've continued down this path of like what we think it means to be, quote, cinematic.
Yeah. I also think that when we coined the term cinematic marketing videos, it meant something different than it does now.
Yeah.
I think the meaning has gone a lot deeper. I always thought that was a placeholder description for what we do, and we'll change it eventually. But I have come to love that term, cinematic marketing videos, more and more and more, and I am equating a lot of meaning to it. And I think what I want to go back to is watching our reel a year ago with slow motion. I did also think that shooting 4K 60 frames a second, that was cinematic, because it slows it down just enough that it's kind of surreal. And we've talked about this before, that like a lot of the new cameras that are coming out, the first thing that you ask is, can you do 4K 60?
What's your frame rate?
What's the frame rate? Like what's the slow motion on it? The FS7 can do 180 frames per second, and the C300 can only do 120 frames per second. Oh, also the C300 crops in a little bit, and the FS7 doesn't. I mean, these are the conversations you immediately go to with a new camera. The new 5D, or the new EOS R, the new mirrorless camera came out from Canon, and it does 4K 60. It's amazing. But what I heard that was even cooler than that was that it does 450 megabits a second, 4K 24.
Yeah.
And that spoke to me, because we've gone on this journey. You came in and you wanted it real time and you wanted nat sound. And I realized that's difficult, because that means I have to be on my game. And before we partnered up and we had a real shop where we have a director, you can actually be director. I don't have to direct anymore. I can just be DP. I can think about what's happening with the camera. I realized when you're a one-man band, when you're the only guy doing everything, pop it into 60 frames a second and you don't even have to think. Just film, you'll get something that's good.
And I think you mentioning that is a good thing, because I don't want to dog on people who are filming in 60,
exactly,
120, 180, whatever, 240, 600, 1,000.
Oh my gosh, the new FS5 does 240 frames a second.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool.
And I don't want to dog on anybody that's filming, in any sort of slow-mo. We've found with two of us that what we want in most cases, sometimes we still pop it into 60.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we pop it into
180.
And
I have to go back to that 180.
I know. So, because it's better than the Canon.
Because it's better than the Canon.
It's more better.
More better.
Yeah. No, I think that we found that's what we want. And if you're a one-man band, even if you're not, don't feel like you have to listen to us. Like, because I'm
do it the way that it looks cool to you.
If it looks good to you, put it out there. And at the end of the day, what we tell every single client is just put videos out there.
Oh, yeah.
If you shoot it on your iPhone, put it out there. Like, if you can't afford us today, fine. Like, hopefully you just put enough content out and you come to us later and when you can't afford us. But,
So I think what I love this. I have started to say that slow motion is kind of the crutch of cinematographers.
And you felt that.
That comes directly from my realization in my own work that popping it into 60 frames a second is the easiest way to get good footage, and giving it more shallow depth of field. Making the depth of field shallower guaranteed makes it prettier. So if you just go shallow and pop it into 60, you're probably fine. And I think it's become, I have realized in my own work and in our work that was my crutch. So if you watched our reel last year when it came out, you're right. It was a lot of slow motion because that's what we had. And I still like it. I think I was on a path, but you came in and you're director and you have asked for, can we get this moment? We need sound of this because the sound is going to make this really work. I'll give one example. For the Arc of Spokane, we got to go into this cool law firm that we have in town, and we wanted to get this B-roll shot. We wanted this wide shot of these. They had these bookshelves full of books, and it was dark, and we wanted to get this slider shot moving forward, moving down the hallway, and we called it kind of a Fincher looking shot because of how dark it was, and
symmetrical
and
oddly timed.
Yes, and I said creatively, I think this should be 60 frames a second. I want to slow it down a little bit because I think that would make it strange and surreal and a little more Fincher-esque because that's kind of what we were going for. So I popped into 60 frames a second. We had a person, we started the slider movement forward. We had this person walk down the hallway and it was interesting. But then we did it again in 24 frames a second, not in slow motion. We moved down the hallway and you see her walk down the hallway real time. And suddenly it got really strange and really, really weird. And it dawned on me that like in that moment, seeing this B-roll shot, this simple B-roll shot of somebody walking down the hallway, seeing that in real time gave it meaning that you didn't get in the slow motion shot. It's through experimenting with that kind of stuff that I've realized I want to see these in real time because it gives you it can give you this feeling that wasn't there.
It's like that daily where we had in Pilgrims, the health food store we shoot for, where the woman pushes the shopping cart through you're just like,
that was the first time I experienced that feeling was in that shot. we got this slider shot of, I mean, we're just in a health food store, this grocery store. We're making videos for their social media platforms, but we're like putting our cinematic spin on these things. We're making it look the way we want it to. We got this shot of the produce section, and this old woman with her cart walks through the scene. I thought nothing of that shot, but you put it in a daily.
I think you asked me, did you speed that?
I wanted to know if you sped that up. No, it was real time. But watching her walk through the produce section at her normal speed with this slow slider movement was so trippy and surreal. You're right. That was the first time that I really felt that what I would like to say is like this feeling of I don't know. That was a cinematic moment for me, because suddenly that simple shot in a grocery store was elevated to a piece of cinema that is beyond the simple advertisement we're making.
Yeah.
This B-roll shot inside the bookshelves of this law firm suddenly became something greater. It was elevated.
It was a very traditional shot, in terms of like the one at the law firm and the one at Pilgrims that I mentioned, that slow movement, but real-time activity happening. I think for the most part, we do handheld. I shouldn't say them for the most part. It's a 50-50 shot, but quite a bit we do handheld.
We do a lot of handheld.
And I think what I've enjoyed is toying around with that traditional cinema versus the handheld, which is pretty popular today, and finding that in between, like what makes us, like what makes our style inland.
Oh yeah. And I think to kind of play off of that one, like what's our style? I had a moment today. We were at Indaba, this coffee shop. We're making some cinematic marketing videos for
some films,
some
pictures.
And you're right. We are kind of 50-50, either locked down on a tripod, on a slider, or handheld. We're about 50-50. And I really liked the last time we were in one of Indaba's locations filming a pour over, this really cool pour over. We got the slider shot, and I liked that. So we went into this other location, and I thought, I'm going to do the same thing, got a slider shot, but it just didn't feel right.
Based on the location?
Totally different location, totally different whatever. I decided in that moment, I'm going to pull it off. We go handheld. And I am filming just handheld, this barista doing their thing, and suddenly, okay, for this shop, for this location, for this specific film, we need to go handheld. It gave me the feeling I was looking for, even though at the last one, the slider shot really gave me that feeling.
Totally. It's awesome.
I was going to argue with you when you said we're 50-50 slider or handheld, and I think I'm realizing now we did so much handheld for a while that we started to understand when we wanted to and why we wanted to get a slider shot or get a gimbal shot, or I would like to stay steady cam.
I think for a while, if I'm being completely honest, I think I was feeling like everything needed to be handheld because it was like the rebellious side in me.
Oh, totally.
To the rest of the world around me, when I see ads and, marketing videos and whatnot.
Turn and burn.
Yeah, turn and burn. But no, I see either turn and burn or I see over polished or over like we're going to put a slider on a ski mountain just to put a slider on a ski mountain. And to me, I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
When I think about a ski mountain, whether it's in summer or winter, summer, I want, not necessarily handheld, but I want, some sort of
chaotic
gimbal and,
Yeah.
Following a mountain biker down or
Yeah.
like whatever. Like you're not selling me when it's a slider of just, this is the mountain and whatever. So I found myself,
I can
wanna
picture
be-
it too.
Yeah. I want to be watching. I want to do handheld because I want to be the opposite of whatever I just
It's
watched.
totally
on TV.
rebellious.
Yeah. So, but I mentioned Reed Morano last week. You mentioned Ozark or whatever, and you find these traditional, cinema shots, angles, movements, and I found myself over and over again going back to those and be like, I like that. And what it is that I like it because, one, it's good. Two, it's not overdone in whatever, medium it is I'm watching. But anyways, but that like 1 minute long, if not more, single shot in I Think We're Alone Now, where he's dragging the body in the in the blanket. Was that shot on a crane that was the longest crane in the world?
Do
you remember that? Do you remember?
I think I remember. Did it ever go up high?
No.
It was probably a Steadicam. I think in the world of gimbals, camera gimbals, the Steadicam is still king, because in moments like that, you kind of need it in order to make it that stable and to follow him for that long. I mean, you're looking it up now. You got to find it.
I'll find it later.
We're going to find it.
Let's talk about it later.
We'll talk about it next week.
It was
we'll figure
insane.
it out. Let's reference Jim Cummings doing whole short films all in one take.
All of them.
I mean, Thunder Road was on a dolly, and
It's
they
all
were
one shot.
It's all one shot. I'm just saying, like, I think there are
Parent Teacher.
What's
the robbery?
Parent Teacher and the robbery had to have been Steadicam, because they followed people around in a space, and it was so stable, and you really got a chance to focus on the acting that was going on, and it was amazing, and it's all one take. But you're right. Thunder Road was on a dolly, and it was moving in. But oh my gosh,
9 days, man. Thunder Road comes out. We're recording this on October 12th. So
you just figured that out. That's good.
I just want to let everybody know. 9 days.
9 days. Will it be on iTunes?
On iTunes.
Are we going to go?
I pre-ordered. Yeah. You might be in, labor and delivery. Who knows?
I might be, but we need to watch that.
Yeah, totally.
My wife is listening to this right now, not happy with what I just said.
Oh, yeah. It's Jim Cummings.
It's Jim Cummings.
The only other thing we had on docket today was practice, and I think we don't have to stick on that. I think what I wanted to get out of that topic was we started a podcast, and I made a joke last week that I don't care if anyone listens, and it's not that I don't care. It's that for me, what we're doing this for, or what I'm doing this for, and because I don't want to speak for you, is that we're practicing with everything we do. We're trying to head in a direction. We made light to last week. We want to make narrative, films, whether they're features or they're episodic, web series, TV, whatever. We're heading in that direction, and by telling people like where we're heading, it's therapeutic. I think why we called it Cinetherapy. We get to hear from other people who may listen to us, like Ira, and give us some sort of critique If you have something really mean to say, then just go hide back in your hole, because I don't care to hear what you have to say. I'm just teasing, but seriously. And I think as we're heading in this direction, like, part of that is telling the story. And Gary V's mantra is document, don't create. And I like that idea of like documenting. I want to look back on that first podcast and say, man, we sounded like idiots.
Yeah.
And podcast 50, be like, wow, we're a little more refined. Like, we've got this down. Number 100, you look at 50 and be like, man, we sound like idiots. And we go back to podcast 1 and say, how did we ever even think to publish this? So that's what I had in this whole like practice mantra.
Yeah.
And not mantra, but
I don't know. That sounds different than practice though. Because that involves the act of, not just the act of practicing, but the act of publishing.
You're right. But for me, that's practice. It's like practice with being okay with putting your work out there.
I like that.
Regardless of like what the response is going to be.
Yeah.
We put that out there. You made a comment last week about school, and we put that out there, and with a risk of hearing from a professor, of one of mine, one of yours.
Yeah.
We, on SoundCloud, I think we had over 30 people listen.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I don't know Pocket Cast. I don't know Google Play. I don't know YouTube.
We don't even know iTunes.
Yeah,
yet.
I don't iTunes. I think we'll hopefully be on iTunes soon.
Hopefully we'll be on iTunes soon.
Yeah. By the time you're listening to this,
we really hope it's on iTunes.
So, but I think, to me, that's part of the practice. Is like,
it is.
Ryan Conley talks about in Film Riot, like, puts his stuff out there, and once you put it out there, you are you're available for any sort of criticism. Like, the trolls can come out, anybody can come out. That's part of the
publishing is part of the practice.
Yeah, it's part of the practice.
I do really, really like that. I mean, that is something we talk about all the time. That's part of what our daily reels are, is just like, for us, it's very therapeutic to make something and publish it. And we have only had a couple of times where we posted we've posted a couple daily reels that our client said, "Hey, I love it, but can we change something, because I don't know if we're allowed to say that." That's only happened a couple of times, and that was easy to fix. Or like we'll post something and, oh my gosh, we don't want to ruin our Instagram algorithm. We don't want to ruin our place in it, so we can't make any text edits. But
and I say screw that at this point.
At this point, yeah, I totally agree. But I think I am just now realizing that publishing is part of the practice, because you have to put it out there. And it goes back to what we talked about last week with Gary Vee talking to this Vine star. You have to be posting every single day. Those are not going to be perfect at all. You just have to post them.
And how many people do you come across that are just like, oh, I'm not ready to post something.
Ready to.
Yeah. And I think, I imagine that the day we create our first pilot episode, or our first short, or our first film, we'll be like, there are a million things that we wish we could change. One, we can't do it because financially we can't afford to go back and refilm. Yeah. 2, in post, it's going to cost us too much. 3, we don't have the time because the deadline for it to get out or whatever. And so I think that's one thing that's nice about deadlines. And even with us, with the daily reels, like we have set a commitment for ourselves, but also an expectation from other people around us that comment all the time about our daily reels. Yeah. And so you feel this obligation that you've got, and that's part of the practice.
Our deadline for daily reels is midnight. It has to be
Pacific Standard
Time. And there was one time we posted one, and the person we joked about last week, when we said we post every day, and they said instantly, "Do you post on the weekends?" That same person, we posted a daily reel pretty close to midnight. It was about 11:55 Pacific Standard Time when that thing hit the internet, and it literally, I had just finished editing it, export, post, and they commented right away, that was close.
Yeah, that was close.
But this totally alludes to Ryan Conley has talked about this in his podcast. Somebody emailed or commented or something, when do you feel like you're done with something? And his simple response to that was when he said the deadline.
Yeah.
When it has to be done. I never feel like something is done. There's only a moment when I have to hit export because it's going to be late if I don't.
Funny thing to think about with that is that one of the artists we listened to a lot back in January, still listen to today, Sad Girl Sloan, Sasha Sloan.
We talked about her Instagram account named
Yeah.
Sad Girl Sloan.
Yeah, and she posted 2 songs on Spotify, and one of them got picked up on the anti-pop playlist, and those were her first 2 songs ever putting out.
You're serious?
Dead serious. And they got put on anti-pop, and she had over a million listens on.
Isn't that how Post Malone started too?
I think so.
He shared something on SoundCloud, and then the next day it
blew up. And so it's this whole thought of like, one, I don't want to be a viral star. I don't want to be a viral company or whatever. But it's like, you never know what you're going to put out there, and somebody that has an actual opinion, what they're going to say about it. And I think that's, more or less you're putting out an invitation, and oftentimes people like watching that journey. They like seeing
It's
that.
true.
And so, yeah.
It's very true. We get a lot of interactions with people face to face. Either it's a new client or somebody we've talked to a lot, but we've never actually done work for them or whatever. We talk to a lot of people face to face, and we get the comment of,
Your button on your sweatshirt.
We get the comment that, I love watching your guys' journey. You post every day, and I can see a progression. It's noticed. And that's just that's a powerful thing. Practice, practice, practice. I saw that on the docket, and I thought, I don't know why we're going to talk about that. But now that you bring it up and you give context to it, that is a huge topic.
My mind went to the fact that I said, I don't care if people listen. And
right.
I want to say, whoever's listening, I'm grateful, because that means that you see something in us that I may not have thought of or want to give credit to, or, that I'm nervous about talking about. So, but I wanted to say, like, the reason for me saying that was because I look at us putting out a podcast. We knew we wanted to record a podcast. We bought our second microphone. We've had this one for voiceovers for quite some time, the one I'm speaking into, but for a year. But we bought a second, knowing we were going to do a podcast, and we sat down one day and we're like, we're going to record today. And to me, that says, like, in that, I was saying, I don't care if somebody has anything to critique or talk poorly about us, whatever, because for me, this means putting it out there. Like, whether, and it's not polished. I hope that episode 50 is more polished. Right. And episode 100 is even more polished than that.
What did you say Facebook's internal mantra is?
They say done, not perfect. There's get SHIT done. I haven't decided if we're going to curse on this or not, and I don't want to check explicit when I submit to iTunes next time.
Yeah, that is really serious.
So
checkbox.
Yeah, exactly. So get SHIT done, and
always be pushing.
So done, not perfect. Like, at the end of the day, that one stands out pretty well.
You can't have that 50th or that 100th post without having the first one.
Yep.
But we have a friend here in town. At the church that we go to, they have a guy on staff that he's basically a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He makes videos for the church. They post on Facebook. They show them during services. They have a live video feed. They finally hired somebody who's in charge of all this stuff, and he has YouTube videos that he wants to post on his personal channel. He hikes. He does he and his family go on these big long hikes, and he wants to do a vlog about filmmaking and hiking, and he has this whole thing. But he's always been nervous to post on that channel. Now that he's hired on at a church making videos, films every single week, they have to be done, ready to go for service.
Mm-hmm.
He makes something, it's got to be done. He works all the way up until the oh my gosh, the deadline, and then he shows it, and he didn't feel like it was done, but it still had to go up in front of 2,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, it's that he's getting into the practice. It has to be done.
Yep.
He's got to post it. It's got to be shown. And it's been a few months now of every week getting it done and posting it and then moving on to the next one. And he's starting to see a progression in his own work, which is really cool to talk to him about, because practice. Publishing is part of the practicing process. You got to publish that one and move on to the next one. And they're getting better and better, because he was scared to post on his own personal YouTube channel for so long. But now he's in the grind of come up with the idea, film it, edit it, share it, get the reaction from people, and see and work on to the next one, and take what you learned into the next one. Done, not perfect. It's been hard for him, but you can see it growing him as a filmmaker.
I love that you talked about this and brought that up and said it in that way, because the only way you can become more efficient in your practices, the only way that you can become better as a filmmaker, is by having those deadlines and pushing stuff out.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned looking back, in order to have 200 of something, you had to have the first, right? Every time we're pushing something out and we're meeting a deadline, whether it's a deadline for ourselves with the Daily Reel of every single day, 5 days a week, not weekends, but or a deadline for a client or whatever, we are building something within us. Synapses are firing in our brain that know how to break sequences down faster within Premiere, how to cut through dialogue faster, or a voiceover or whatever it is in Premiere. All of those things are all through this practice process, which is also part of publishing process is part of that.
Yeah.
And if we were constantly worried about something being perfect, then we would never get anything out. I can promise you, I would be Sam, maybe we should. I don't know.
That is so good.
I'm hanging out with my son this weekend, which will be pretty freaking cool.
Dude, I get to hang out with my son this weekend.
Nice.
Let's reference, we go to the same barber, who's a big, scary dude, tattoo all over his head. He lifts. And one of the coolest things that I love about this guy is that he is all about dads being dads. He hates when guys are in his barber chair, they're getting their hair cut, and they say, "Yeah, I got to babysit my kids." He absolutely hates that, and you can see the rage in his eyes. He's like, "No, you're being a dad. You get to hang out with your children.
You're gonna be a dad.
You're gonna be a dad
this weekend."
So yeah, you get to hang out with your son this weekend.
Yeah. Any gear? We talked about the small HD last week.
We did. I'd like to talk about it again this week. No. Mm-hmm.
No.
You know what? Actually, favorite piece of gear on my mind right now. There are two, but I'll narrow it down. I love our lenses. I'm going to say lens. I love our lens. We have two that we go to all the time, but the one that really never comes off the camera is our Sigma 18 to 35 T2 Cine lens.
Yep.
This thing seriously never comes off the camera. We're usually at 35 millimeters for most of our, because we do documentary. You said we do handheld. I mean, we like to get in kind of close. But I have gone in the wedding. I talked about I was in the wedding photography business, and so I collected lenses, a lot of primes. I love Canon primes; they're amazing. And then I broke one of my Canon primes, and I had to buy another lens to replace it. I don't know if it was a 50 millimeter or what, but I ended up buying the Sigma Art lens version of it because that was what everybody was talking about, and I loved it so much. Price point was a lot better. And it still, in a lot of ways, it outperformed the Canon primes, which is sacrilege to say. But when there was an opportunity for us to invest in nice lenses for our cinema, went with the Sigma version of those lenses, or the Cine version of those Sigma lenses. And they've got focus gears. They're so smooth. These lenses are huge and heavy, but I mean...
And we treat them like primes for the most part.
We treat them like primes. I mean, it's always at T2, which technically, if you want to get really technical about this one, they are f1.8. But if we're going to talk about T-stops, the tested amount of light that they were able to get was f2. The shallow depth of field is amazing.
More shallower.
There's so much more shallow depth of field in these lenses.
Any other shows besides Ozark?
Can I ask you that one?
Sure.
I'll think about it for a second. What's something what's a director or a film, a picture, or a show that you've been watching lately that's really inspired you?
I'm really stoked on Jim Cummings' Thunder Road. We mentioned him in this podcast earlier. I'm really stoked to see his feature. The feature. He had a short called Thunder Road. If you have not watched Thunder Road, the short by Jim Cummings on Vimeo, you have to watch it.
It's incredible.
It's 12 minutes of your time. Go do it. That is what I'm looking forward to from a filmmaker that I follow from afar. But I'm not gonna say a film. There are two questions here, I think, that are like, what's the funniest thing you've seen on the internet, and what's a film or a filmmaker that you like? And Joe Rogan's Strange Times was the most recent thing that I watched, and it is hilarious. And so that's probably what I would say. And it's probably pretty controversial to a lot of people. Only 50% of people liked it on Rotten Tomatoes, but it had a lot of anybody that really liked it was 98%, 98% on Tomato. But it was pretty freaking funny.
Oh, I'm watching Castle Rock.
Oh
my goodness. I loved Lost. I don't know if anybody watched Lost, but that was my family, my mom, my dad, my brother, and I, we all watched Lost.
Everyone watched it besides me.
Besides you.
Yes.
And there was a point, I don't even remember what season, there was a point where I got lost. I could not track with any of the storyline.
Writer's strike.
And I gave up. But there was something about that show that was so mysterious. And I didn't realize until later in life, when I actually started really paying attention to directors, that was J.J. Abrams. And my dad absolutely hates J.J. Abrams, mostly because my dad is a Star Trek fan, one of the nerdiest human beings I know on the planet. And he detests what J.J. Abrams has done to the new Star Wars, or the new Star Trek films. I say Star Wars because he also
did a Star Wars film.
And my dad is also not a fan of that. But I personally love them, and I love what J.J. Abrams is doing for the look of cinema right now. He's got the Alexa 65 sensor, the big giant sensor. He uses old anamorphic lenses, and he gets these crazy flares. And he's definitely impacted the way that like our new form of cinema right now, this new wave of cinema. But Castle Rock, the story is verging on Lost territory. It's what I liked about Lost, but I'm in the middle of season 1 and I am nervous that I'm going to start trailing, but I have to get that out of my mind. I love the story of Castle Rock. I love how uncomfortable it makes me feel. And sometimes the color grading verges on Ozark territory. It's very either blue aggressive in the blues or something. And I like getting into that. You're looking at the time.
Yeah.
We went way over.
We're so far over.
There will be a lot that we cut from this one.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Or we don't, because I don't care.
Okay, how do we end this?
Exactly like that. We will wrap it up. Next week, join us as we talk more about deadlines, cash flow, and questioning why we make decisions we make as filmmakers and artists. And that's a wrap.